Hello friends, now today let us talk about Mughal architecture. And Mughal architecture can be subdivided, further divided into two phases. First phase, Akbar. And in this first phase itself, the Akbari form of architecture of of the Mughals, we see that the dominant features of the Mughal architecture, the dominant thematic features of the Mughal architecture, and not just the dominant physical features, but the thematic features of the Mughal architectures, they are fixed during the Akbari period, and then later on new modalities are used in this form of architecture, the Mughal form of architecture, during the period of Shah Jahan. Okay, and certain thematic shifts also takes place during the period of Shah Jahan. However, we see that the themes remain more or less constant, but we see that certain artistic modalities are changed during the period of Shah Jahan. Now, firstly, we should talk about the concept of symmetry. Why? Because it is Babur who even mentions in his Baburnama that when he comes to India and when he looks at the earlier Muslim architecture of India, he finds it not appealing to him because of the lack of symmetry. Now, symmetry is a very important concept in, Muslim architecture. The symmetry here means that everything should be able to be subdivided into four equal parts. Okay, so we see that the Mughal architecture, which begins after the Sultanate period architecture, we see that the concept of symmetry takes great hold of the entire architectural form in India. Okay, so we see that the very first examples of symmetrical architecture in India were the laying of gardens. Okay, some of the very first examples of symmetrical architecture in India were the laying of gardens, and these gardens were in the form of the Charbagh or the Chaharbagh. Chaharbagh or Charbagh is one single garden which can be divided, which is again further subdivided into four equal gardens, and which is bisected, okay, by two streams, usually with a central fountain. Now it is a completely symmetrical garden with four equal gardens, and therefore the name Charbagh or Chaharbagh. Okay, so four equal gardens, one whole garden divided or bisected by two streams with a fountain in the middle, and this was done so that it could represent the garden of paradise. Okay, according to the Muslims, this is what the garden of paradise would look like, and therefore it was done as a representation of the garden of paradise on earth. Some of the examples of Mughal gardens are Aram Bagh. It is in Aram Bagh where Babur was first buried when he died, and then he was later taken away from Aram Bagh and laid in a garden in Kabul known as the Bagh-e Babari. Alright. So there is a garden in Kabul, Afghanistan known as the Bagh-e-Babari, where Babur is buried today, but he was previously buried in Aram Bagh. Now we have also got the shining example of Mughal architecture in the form of gardens, that is the Shalimar Bagh. Shalimar Bagh, which is in Kashmir. Then there is another garden in Kashmir, the Nishad Bagh. Okay. Now Shalimar Bagh was built by Jahangir, and the Nishad Bagh was again built by Shah Jahan. Okay. Well, then we have got another Shalimar Bagh, okay, which is located in Lahore. All right. So these are some of the examples of Mughal gardens which were built by the Mughals, okay, and these became very, great examples of the Mughal prowess in horticulture. But however, we have to move forward and we have to talk about, architectural influences of the Mughal. Now, when we are talking about the architectural influences which the Mughals incorporated into their form of architecture, we see that the Persian form of architecture, okay, the Persian Islamic form of architecture is the most significant and the most important element. Okay, but apart from the Persian, we also see influence of the Indian form of architecture, all right, in the form of the Rajasthani. All right, we also have got Gujarati, and we also have got the Bengali influence in Mughal architecture. Now this predominantly happens because when the Mughals come and when they start building these monuments, the employment is generated from within India, and of course there are Indian artisans who are working, and therefore the ideas of the Indian artisans who already are very familiar or who already are very proficient in the Rajasthani, Gujarati and Bengali forms of architecture, now they start influencing the Mughal buildings also. But however, out here we will also have to talk about the philosophy of the Mughal Empire, the philosophy of administration of the Mughal Empire. And the philosophy of Mughal administration was not merely, you see, confined to one religion, okay. However, it was an eclectic philosophy, and therefore we see these various influences, you see, incorporated within Mughal architecture. And the Mughal architecture also reflects Akbar's own religious policy of tolerance, okay. And the religious policy of tolerance that was followed by Akbar, it is reflected in the Mughal architecture of this period, because we see that not only Muslim form of architecture is used in constructing these monuments, but the various Indian and Hindu, you see, motifs are also incorporated and are also used. In fact, there are certain elements in Akbari architecture which would be considered, you see, against the Islamic law. However, he still goes on and he builds these monuments, and therefore we see that his own religious policy of tolerance, his own religious policy of cosmopolitanism, okay, and a composite, you see, religious philosophy, these are all influences on Mughal architecture. All right. So in the next part we will be talking about the specific examples of Mughal architecture. The first important example of Mughal architecture in India is that of the Humayun's tomb. And in the Humayun's tomb, we see the first perfect example of the Persian double dome. Now, you might be asking what the double dome exactly is. The double dome are two domes, one concealed within the other. While the internal dome, it serves as a ceiling, it also serves as a support to the external dome. All right. And in most cases, these domes are also adorned with certain Indian motifs, such as you might be seeing, you see, decorations such as this. This is known as the lotus motif. This is an inverted lotus placed upon the dome. And then you might also see the Kalash motif, that are you see, inverted water vessels laid one on top of the other to form a kind of pyre over the dome. These are specifically, you see, specifically Indian influences on the Persian double dome. We see that the first example of Persian double dome in India, first complete example of Persian double dome in India is that of the double dome of the Humayun's tomb. And this is a dome which is constructed out of white marble. So it also becomes one of the first examples of the use of white marble in construction of domes, okay. So white marble, this point also is very important to remember. First example, one of the very first examples of the use of white marble in construction of the dome. However, the other materials which were used predominantly during the period of Akbar was red sandstone. This is the most you see, predominant material which is used for construction. Now a red sandstone will be replaced by marble when we come to the time of Shah Jahan. However, at this point of time, red sandstone is the most important for you see, material used. And then of course we proceed towards the very important fact that the Humayun's tomb was constructed by the master constructor Mirza Ghiyas, and it was commissioned by Humayun's wife and Akbar's mother, Hamida Banu Begum, and it was constructed during the period of it was completed during the period of Akbar. So this is one of the most important examples of Akbari form of architecture. Now going on from there, in during Akbar's period, two very important architectural activities were consigned, and they were the Fatehpur Sikri complex and the Agra fort. Now, the fact remains that the Fatehpur Sikri is one of the most magnificent monuments or one of the most magnificent testimonials of Mughal form of architecture, and it is within Fatehpur Sikri's complex that we see that the philosophy of Akbar, the religious policy of Akbar is quite well reflected in the various architectural constructs of the Fatehpur Sikri complex. In the Fatehpur Sikri complex, we will also see the staples of Mughal architecture such as the Diwan-e-Aam and the Diwan-e-Khas, which become staples of the Mughal architecture, which are again incorporated into the Agra fort, will be incorporated into the Delhi fort or the Lal Killa, the Red Fort. Okay, so Diwan-e-Aam, Diwan-e-Khas, we see it there. We also see the Janana area. All right, the area which was reserved for the ladies, the walled off area which was reserved for the ladies, and it would seem that this area was an exclusive area for the ladies of the Mughal harem. All right, and within the Janana itself, we find certain buildings where Hindu motifs and Hindu religious motifs, okay, specifically, which are found within the Janana area, and it has been conjectured that these Hindu religious motifs and these etchings on the walls of these enclosures were actually for the Hindu wives of Akbar, okay, the Rajput wives of Akbar, which he contracted marriage with for his policy of marriage alliances. Okay, so this we see in the Fatehpur Sikri complex, and another important addition to the Fatehpur Sikri complex was the Buland Darwaza. Buland Darwaza, which was built to celebrate the victory of Akbar over Gujarat. Alright. Now, the Fatehpur Sikri complex also houses the Dargah of Salim Chishti. Salim Chishti, okay. So, these are important things that you have to remember about Fatehpur Sikri. And as far as the Agra fort is concerned, it is also a fort, the blueprint of which will be used later on to build the Lal Killa by Shah Jahan, okay. And many of the important you see enclosures within the Agra fort itself was built by Shah Jahan, but it was the fort which was built by Akbar, and Shah Jahan made many additions to this fort. Okay. Now, proceeding forward from there, during the period of Jahangir, we see that Jahangir's wife Noor Jahan had built the Itimad ud Daula tomb. Okay, and it was built in to house the remains of Itimad ud Daula. Okay, Itimad ud Daula tomb. Itimad ud Daula being the father of Noor Jahan, and Noor Jahan had commissioned the building of the Itimad ud Daula tomb. Now, remember, the Itimad ud Daula tomb is the first example of white marble being used for tomb construction. Okay, use of white marble. We also see that in the Itimad ud Daula tomb, we also see the work of Pietra Dura. Pietra Dura work. Now, Pietra Dura is a very important element. Let me explain. Pietra Dura is a very important element of Mughal form of architecture. Okay, in this form of architecture, what is done is that etchings are made on marble. Okay, and recesses are made on marble, and precious stones are filled within those recesses. You see, making a very brilliant impression and say producing a very brilliant effect when the sunlight strikes over the Pietra Dura. Now, this kind of practice is still continued in the Agra region. You might be able to see it. Okay, various tables and tabletops are built with the use of Pietra Dura work, and then also floorings are made with the use of Pietra Dura work. It is still prevalent in the Agra region, and Pietra Dura work is predominantly used in the construction of the Itimad ud Daula tomb. Now, the use of white marble and the use of Pietra Dura for tomb construction and for construction of monuments per se, you see, this Itimad ud Daula tomb forms the first example of predominant use of these modalities, and they later on become incorporated into the Shah Jahani form of architecture of the Mughals, and therefore, it is also seen, the Itimad ud Daula tomb is also seen as a bridging between the Akbari form of architecture and the Shah Jahan form of architecture. Okay, it bridges the gap. Okay, bridging the gap. It bridges the gap between the Akbari form of architecture, which is red sandstone, and the Shahjahani form of architecture, which is exemplified by the use of course, the white marble. Okay, so these are very important examples during the Akbari form of architecture period, where Akbar's ideas and policies are very much influential over the kind of constructions that are being made at this period. Okay, and we also have to proceed forward from there and look into the Shahjahan period of architecture. Okay, and for that we will look into it in a different part.